there was a problem when we approached 2012, December 21st, 2012.
When you approached me, it was quite surprising that you had the kind of disclosures that you had and some of the background that you have. I do want to say that we're in a public place here, but we are forced to be in this kind of a public place for a number of reasons that I can't explain on camera, but take it from me, there's a purpose for this.
And that's because the information in this interview needs extra caution. Minutes later, something strange happened.
I just want to make sure that we cover this sort of preliminary until you go to the low level of what went on. And we are still having helicopters in the vicinity in the background. What do you think?
This is not going away.
Once you hear what he's about to say, the timing of those helicopters won't feel random anymore.
We have had to move from our location where we were to a more private situation in order to take this testimony because we have been overflown by repeated number of helicopters that simply did not want to go away.
They were there long before the interview.
Let me be straight with you. While working on this video, some of the things I found really shook my sense of reality a bit. It might do the same for you, but I'd honestly recommend watching until the end, because it gets very, very interesting.
One of the caveats that I do have some personal information that I did get personally involved in was some information that had to do with the Stargates and Looking Glass, and more specifically the 2012 problem with those projects. I guess popular opinion of what's out there right now is that the project was shut down because there was a problem when we approached 2012.
This is a 2012 Project Camelot interview with Carrie Cassidy and Bill Wood, a former Navy member who said he had access to information far outside the public eye. At that time, people were already talking about 2012. But Bill claimed the real concern wasn't a prophecy or a calendar date. It was a classified program the public almost never heard about. It was called Project Looking Glass, a secret program built around a controlled setup where they tested how different decisions could change what comes next. It wasn't one machine, but an entire process. They would adjust certain conditions, introduce a possible choice, and then watch how the timeline shifted. The goal wasn't to predict the future like a fortune teller. The goal was to see how the future reacts when the present changes, almost like watching reality update itself based on every decision made.
The timelines converge on that point in time. And when you know enough about the Stargate projects and the Looking Glass project to know how string theory works and how the possibility of possibilities works and how making one choice over here doesn't necessarily mean the other choice couldn't exist at the same time. But once you get your brain wrapped around this subject, you find out that at the end of 2012, in an easy way to put it, the choices that we make become less and less consequential to the future. And eventually we're pushed into this bottleneck of time, no matter which choice we make.
What Bill is describing here is the main flaw behind the technology they were using. The idea was this: they would feed different choices into the system. Things like, what happens if we choose X? Or what happens if we choose Y? And the machine would show the most likely future for each choice. At first, it looked extremely convincing. If one option showed a 79% chance of happening and the other showed 21%, they assumed the 79% outcome was basically guaranteed. In other words, they believed the machine could calculate the future like a probability chart, the same way weather forecasts or simulations work. But what they didn't realize was that these probabilities could change very fast once real people, free will, and real-world actions started influencing the situation. Something that looked almost certain at one moment could shift completely a short time later. Bill's point is simple. They were treating the numbers as fixed, when in reality, the future was still flexible. So the big mistake wasn't the data, it was believing that the data could not change. This created a false sense of certainty, and that's why everything started to fall apart later.
What happened was people, very smart people, began to figure out that something big was coming up. Something that made it so all the possibilities of all the future scenarios of any choice, any possibility that was fed in and observed through the looking glass inherently ended up in the same future. And no decision and no possibility changed past a certain point. That's the big secret.
Okay, so is that certain 2012 in your understanding?
It well coincides with December 21st, 2012.
Bill says that as they kept testing the machine, something strange started happening. No matter what scenario they entered, all timelines were ending in the same future. Normally, when you test different choices, you expect different results, different paths, different outcomes. But at a certain point, around the end of 2012, every path, every possibility, every simulation started showing the same ending. That's what he means when he says all possible timelines lead to the same basic set of history. To the people running the project, this was terrifying. Why? Because it meant they had lost control. It didn't matter what they did, what decisions they made, or what plans they tried to execute. The machine kept showing the same final outcome. So the big secret wasn't that the future could be predicted. The big secret was that the future seemed locked, and nothing they did could change the direction things were heading. This is the moment where the people in charge started to panic, not because they knew what was coming, but because they couldn't stop it.
The people that know everything about Looking Glass, that have gotten all the reports and all the information, the elites of the world, probably figured out that that was the end of the game. Nothing could be manipulated beyond that point.
The people who had full access to the Looking Glass data eventually realized something unsettling. The machine kept giving them the same answer, over and over again, an outcome they did not want. For years, they believed the future could be shaped, influenced, or redirected. But once the timelines started converging, the technology stopped giving them the results they were hoping for. Every test ended the same way. Every scenario collapsed into the same final point. Bill says that this was the moment when those in control understood they had reached the end of the game, a point beyond which their influence no longer mattered. And here's the part that raises the real question. If they didn't like the answer, did they try finding a way to change the entire phenomenon? If a tool that once worked was suddenly useless, it's only natural to imagine that they would search for another method, another technology, capable of pushing reality in a different direction, or at least delaying the outcome they feared. If they were looking for a way to override or bypass the convergence of timelines, there is one project people often point to because of its timing, scale, and ambition. A project designed to manipulate the smallest building blocks of reality itself. And that brings us to Cern.
What about the notion that Cern, for example, is engaged in trying to beat that game, as you call it?
I would say, look at the problems CERN has had, the crazy little things that have kept that project from moving forward. Certainly, they have never even come close to getting that project to the level they want it to be to do what they really want to do with it.
Okay, well, what about the notion that that's the party line, that they haven't been able to do so? But if you really think about it, that's what they would prefer people to believe so that they don't think that there's a threat.
Listen to the interviews of the scientists that are working on the project. Even they say that it seems like somebody or something from the future won't let them get that project done.
This interview happened in 2012. At that time, CERN was already a massive scientific organization, founded in 1954, and had become the world's largest particle physics laboratory. But what most people don't realize is that the machine everyone talks about, the Large Hadron Collider, only became fully operational in 2008, just a few years before Bill's testimony. In simple terms, this machine does one thing. It accelerates tiny particles to almost the speed of light and smashes them together. When they collide, they break into even smaller pieces, allowing scientists to study the fundamental structure of reality, the particles and forces that existed right after the Big Bang. It's like a giant microscope, but instead of using lenses and light, it uses extreme collisions to reveal the building blocks of the universe. And yes, CERN did face real, documented problems. In its first years, they dealt with overheating magnets, electrical faults, leaks, and unexpected.
Visualize yourself at the end of the year. Where do you want to be? So this is how I used Claude to help me think differently.
Shutdowns that forced the entire collider to stop multiple times. These weren't hidden events. They were public technical failures that slowed down the project. The official purpose of the LHC has always been straightforward: to understand matter, energy, and the origins of the universe. Nothing mystical, nothing dramatic, just high-energy physics pushing technology to its limit. But the timing is what makes people curious. Bill was talking about timelines converging in 2012. Cern was pushing the collider to its highest power levels in the exact same period. And for many people online, the overlap between the two stories raises a simple question. Were they just studying reality, or trying to push against something much bigger?
At a certain point, after they're done hearing the computer tell them this is what's going to happen over and over and over and over again, all they become focused on is, how do we fix it?
Why? What is this that's going to happen?
The inevitable contraction of the timelines.
The idea described here is that at a certain point, all timelines begin moving toward the same outcome because people's awareness naturally increases. According to Bill, this isn't an ending or a collapse. It's an awakening, a moment where more people start seeing things clearly, questioning what they're told, and understanding information that once felt hidden or confusing. And once this process begins, it can't really be stopped. The old ways of shaping or influencing the future don't work the same, because people become harder to mislead. If this awakening, as Bill describes it, is real, then some of the strange things people notice today become more interesting. The Mandela effect, for example, when large groups of people remember something differently than how it appears now, is often discussed as a possible sign that something isn't aligning perfectly in our timeline. A short example: many people vividly remember Mandela dying in the 1980s, even though the official date is 2013. It doesn't prove anything, but it does make people wonder why these differences are so widespread. These mismatched memories are often compared to small glitches, tiny hints that the timeline may have shifted or changed direction at some point, logos that look different than people remember, movie lines that suddenly don't match the version in their heads, details that feel off. Even if there are normal explanations, the pattern itself leaves people with questions. This idea connects back to converging timelines. If reality did shift toward a single direction, some small details might not have carried over perfectly, which could explain why certain memories no longer match what we see today.
No, I am your father.
Seen this way, the awakening Bill talks about becomes easy to understand. More clarity, more awareness, more people paying attention, and a future that's harder to control through confusion or uncertainty.
Is it your understanding that the notion that looking glass has been, that there are various looking glasses around the globe supposedly, that according to Dan Burish were shut down? Is it your understanding they're actually not shut down?
I believe that they're shut down because they are all saying the same thing, and they're completely useless at this point. Right. It's like the Wicked Witch, looking into the, magic mirror and always getting the same answer. If you were always getting the exact opposite of the answer that you wanted, you'd stop talking to the mirror. And that's essentially what happened with Looking Glass. Is not only did they not want people to use it anymore because they knew it was just going to burp out the same thing, but at the same time they didn't want anybody else to know what it was saying, I'm sure, because that information was monumental concern when I was in the military about how to prevent this inevitability.
When he talks about the end of their world, the meaning is not about destruction or collapse. It refers to the end of an old system, a system built on secrecy, influence, and controlling what people know or believe. In his view, a large awakening doesn't mean chaos. It means that more people begin to see things for what they really are. They recognize patterns, they understand how information works, and they become harder to steer in any direction that isn't genuinely aligned with their own thinking. A shift like this doesn't happen all at once. It grows slowly, person by person, until it reaches a point where the old methods simply stop working. The world that ends is the one where a small group can shape the larger picture without being questioned, and the world that begins is one where people think more independently, ask better questions, and rely less on the stories they are given. From this perspective, the real change is inside people, not outside. It's a change in clarity, awareness, and the ability to recognize when something doesn't add up. And once enough people reach that level, the entire structure of influence loses its strength. Not because someone fought it, but because people no longer respond to it the same way.
We as human beings are far more capable of using many advanced skills beyond 5 senses.
Do you feel that you were enhanced physically?
No. I have had a device implanted in me, and I later was of the understanding that that device did not do what I was told it was doing. It was not to provide enhancement, it was to provide monitoring. You were never told that the actual belief in what you were doing was giving you the ability.
What's being described here is a psychological mechanism, not a technological one. The device that was implanted wasn't meant to give anyone special abilities. It was meant to make them believe they had those abilities. And once someone believes something strongly enough, their mind can unlock skills they didn't realize they already had. The point is simple. The belief itself was the real trigger. By giving someone a piece of metal and telling them it was enhancing their abilities, the instructors could activate confidence, focus, and intuition. Things the human mind is already capable of, but rarely uses consciously. It's similar to a placebo effect. The object doesn't do anything, but the belief in the object changes the person's behavior and performance. And here's the important detail. If a person learns that their abilities come from their own mind, you can't take those abilities away. But if they believe their power comes from the device, then removing the device removes the ability. This made belief a tool, a way to control when someone felt capable and when they didn't. The meaning behind all this is very straightforward. Humans already have mental capacities far beyond what they normally access. But in many cases, we only unlock them when we believe something external gives us permission to do so.
The biggest cherry on top of all this conversation would be a synopsis to say that if I could convince everybody out there that for all intents and purposes, what we believe to be true eventually becomes true. If somebody convinces us that a major disaster is going to happen in the very near future, a major disaster happens in the very near future. If we don't buy into that fear and accept that there's really nothing that we know is going to happen and accept of whatever happens, that makes the convergence of the timelines happen as naturally as possible.
It's honestly difficult to accept the idea that there could be multiple timelines. We don't have a clear way to confirm something like that, and most of us were never taught to even consider it a real possibility. But when you hear these explanations, they stay with you. At least, they stayed with me. I kept thinking about them long after I finished watching the interview, and the more I thought about it, the more it shook my sense of what's real and what isn't. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, unsettling way that makes you question how much of reality we actually understand. And maybe that's the strangest part. Because if we can't fully explain the world we're in, then the anomalies people notice today, the inconsistencies, the odd memories, the little things that don't add up, become much harder to ignore. Take the Mandela effect, not as proof of anything supernatural, but as something that simply doesn't fit, something no one can fully explain. Millions of people remembering the same thing in a different way. Details that don't match. Events that feel shifted. No matter how many theories exist, none of them explain everything. And that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. Because if reality really did shift direction, if timelines really did merge, then anomalies like these might be the fingerprints left behind. Small signs that something changed in a way we didn't notice at the time.
They're trying to grasp times and reality, says the Lord. I see constricting time. I see that the Lord is constricting time. But they want to find infinite times and realities, and this is what they're trying to do. The multiverse. They're trying to tap into different realities to have a positive outcome. And for some reason, he's showing me the word religion. What does that have to do with it? Okay, I see religion and quantum physics. And he's saying, what am I telling you, my Dorothy? Study more and be observant. I'm showing you something. Put the puzzle pieces together and my master plan will come forward. Study. What else do you want me to study? Infinite realities, time and space. So the Lord kept saying to me, time warp and black holes. So let's explain what a time warp is. A time warp is when time appears to behave differently than normal, slowing down, speeding up, or folding in unusual ways. The term is used in a few different contexts. In movies, books, and shows, the time warp often means jumping to another time, past or future, or experiencing time at a different speed than everyone else. It's tied to ideas of time travel, wormholes, or alternate dimensions. In quantum physics, the closest concept comes from Einstein's theory of relativity. Time is not fixed, it's relative to speed and gravity. If you move close to the speed of light or are near a very strong gravitational field, like a black hole, time for you passes more slowly compared to someone further away. This effect is called time dilation. This can feel like a time warp because two people can experience different amounts of time passing even if they meet again later. And now that we understand what time warping is and what it has to do with black holes, I'm going to give you the word that the Lord gave me when he kept saying to me, time warp, black holes, and time dilation. So you're showing me time dilation. Seriatos of the quantum realm. You're showing me small particles, atoms. Seriatos of my electrons, protons, and neutrons. And time dilation. What does this mean? A time warp indeed. Time traveling and time tunneling or quantum tunneling. I will show you more about this matter, my Dorothy. You will be surprised. You reminded me of those words that you told me about a kaleidoscopes. And a fraction of time, and I see the lens of all these different perspectives on the kaleidoscope. I'll say frames, lens, points on the axis, AXIS, access points. Kaleidoscope. Fear not. What is Cern doing? Looking into time and reality. I'm showing you a map. What am I showing you? Yeah, I see bringing about new life and hybrids that are not of I am. And I hear a distortion of the map. I'm bringing it to life. You said a quantum map indeed. The beginning from the end, and I'm showing you. And I see reptiles and reptilians. What? I see a... What? Is that why Yeshua is telling me to study time warps and black holes? I think they're coming out. It looks like a black hole, but it's like a portal that's black. Is this a black hole or is this a portal that's black? And I see coming out of it these Nephilim. They're tall and they're disgusting. They're kind of like the Predator. Ancient demons, the Lord just said. Ancient demons. And you're showing me Egyptian hieroglyphics. I think I said that right. Ancient times. I think these are the demons from that time of the Nephilim, of the Egyptians. Okay, I just heard starbeam. But from when they wrote those hieroglyphics and they had UFOs, quote unquote, Nephilim craft on those hieroglyphics. And he said, what are they calling forward? New life, not I am. Okay. Okay, you said a time warp, indeed, a time dilation. I don't know if they're trying to go back in time to bring these things forward to the present. Wow. I think that's what it is, Lord. Ancient demons, yes, because you said ancient demons. You're telling me, but they stand outside of time. And I hear someone say, don't they know this? And then I hear different realities and universes. You're saying, what are they peering into? And I believe you're saying they don't even know yet. You're saying, but they will see me for who I am, and I see the hand of God coming down. Okay, to stop their plans, and I see it is a reckoning ball. Have faith and push forward. The end is near. But you're putting in my spirit that the enemy seeks to change times and seasons. But Apollyon or Abaddon the Destroyer will only be let loose when you say. And you just say you have the keys to life and death. Okay, I just heard a great mystery. And then I hear Babylon. I hear the great mystery of death and how sin came into the world. And you're telling me Adam and Eve. Okay, I just saw something being crushed. I think that was the serpent's head. And then I see the word time. And time is in essence. Time is in essence, and much exposure will happen in the waking days. Why are you bound by time? Every morning you wake up, do you see me for who I am? What are the constrictions on your life? You have none. I have come to give you life and life more abundantly. What does abundantly mean? Superseding your realities and your perspective on life. The Lord is showing me the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, where there is no time. And he's reminding me how Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven is now in us. The kingdom of heaven has come here on earth. The kingdom of heaven is in us. Let it be on earth how it is in heaven. In heaven there is no time. And he said, bound by time no more, my Dorothy. You see well. What am I showing you? And you're showing me the millennial reign coming forward. And you're telling me new words about this era. I hear kings and priests. Ooh, for you, Lord. Unto your mighty God, Jehovah. Every knee will bow. Every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. And I see this happening in the millennial reign. And you're telling me much words will come forward out of your mouth for this time and this era. ERA. Pinpoint, precision, and accuracy indeed, and I will show you more. A time warp, Dorothy. Look into it and push forward. The secrets of my heart I am sharing with you. There is no more time. Whew. Time is an essence, a fragment of life. When he said there is no more time, he brought me back to what he said, that we're not going to be bound by time anymore. We shouldn't be. Lord, do you want to expand on that? What do you mean by that? I see curse words bringing forth the new in some people's life that are demonic seeds that they have planted by their lack of faith. And I see corruption of timelines. Now he's telling me to adjust your faith and come up higher. Yes, this is what he was showing me. He was showing me infinite realities and universes created by people's mouths. Different realms that they are speaking forth Oh my goodness. Created by people's mouths. And he's giving you that verse. Choose this day whom you will serve. And what reality are you living in? Are you living in the truth of my word and my glory? And then I see the word facts. And then I hear fact or fiction. He says, some people perceive me not. I see them living in alternate realities that were not set forth from God because it's the path that they chose. And how he's showing it to me is like these globes of worlds people are living in because it's their perspective. He said, how do you change your perspective? The thinking and ways of I am, renewing your mind in the word of God daily. What you speak, you shall have. I also see alternate realities in people's hearts, their souls. I see some pushing them forward to a timeline that's not of I am. I see corrupted minds. And it's interesting because your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotion. And I hear the Lord saying to people, come back to me and stay on my timeline. And I see heart postures and the Lord fixing people's hearts, straightening it out. Corruption of the minds, indeed. I am the very thing that brings life. I am the one. I am the Alpha. I am the Omega. I am the Word in the beginning. And there's no lack of life in Almighty God. You must be ready. And I see his brides. He said he makes the world clean. And I see Jesus in his blood. When they accept repentance, they will move forward. And these are keys. See, when they accept their wrong heart postures and their bad way of thinking, corrupted minds will fail. And I will bring out the new in their lives in more than one way. But it is a reckoning of the heart, a reckoning ball indeed, says the Lord. And my Dorothy, you are speaking well. My promises I keep, you are flourishing. Do you see what I mean when I say quantum physics? It's bigger than you thought. The world is turning at a rapid pace. Who will slow down and listen to the words of I am? Praise you, Jesus. Wow. Stay in the flow, a continuous one indeed, and the rivers of life are pouring out onto you. I want you guys to understand what they're doing. They use Operation Looking Glass to see the possible outcomes of the future and what they can do now to manipulate future outcomes to get the results that they want. And the way that they do this is by feeding us lies. That is why the Lord told us that he's exposing truths in this hour, and everything hidden is being exposed. This is why they have the Mockingbird operations, the Christian narratives, the military bots on YouTube channels coming against anyone speaking against their narrative that they're trying to say. It's all an operation, because if they can give you false information, they can corrupt the timelines to get the outcome they want. But God's hand is on it. So they saw when they looked through Operation Looking Glass that they could only go so far because God was going to correct the timelines. Isn't that what he's been telling us? That's why the Lord is giving us these words, because the truth will set you free. You cannot bury your head in the dirt and act like there's no reason for God to be exposing this. Let's just look up in the clouds in La La Land and pretend it's rainbows and butterflies and not expose the wickedness that's going on. That is the reason why we're in this situation in the world that we are now, because the church has buried their head too long and allowed the corruption to go on. But they saw in 2012 a change happening. That's when things hidden started to be revealed, and little by little more exposure is happening. And this is what's gonna bring forth the great awakening, like the man just said, the truth. In the same page this video was on there, and the Lord said in that prior word that I just posted about the time warps, he was speaking of kaleidoscope. And I still didn't understand what in the world does kaleidoscope have to do with anything until I just watched this video right now. Take a look.
Literally, there are 2 or more concurrent timelines that we're living in. I've got to be very careful with this. They were handing this cube around from country to country to the elitists in the countries to look into their own futures so that they could pick the best paths for themselves.
It feels like he revealed more than he should have, and I wondered if something happened to him after all those public statements. So I started looking him up. On Reddit, people were asking about Dan Burish, where he is now, and if he's okay. And then I found this. A disturbing image. A user saying he was warned shortly after speaking publicly. And that definitely makes you pay attention to what he's saying next.
Those 2 time streams could occur simultaneously. Reality could be mixed, which is why there are so many confusing data sets.
Are you saying that you could look at something one day and measure it, and look at it the next day, and the measurements can be different because a different timeline is then come into play?
Yeah.
All this information comes from inside Majestic 12, a top secret US government group he says he was a part of. But here's the thing. He's not the only one talking about this. The American writer Philip K. Dick described the same idea.
We were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant.
They were still reticent about informing me as to what the real nature of the situation was. The actual potential for both timeline number 1 and timeline number 2 outcomes, in the case that we're in right now, we seem to be in a variant of timeline 1. It's not happening exactly the way that they figured that it would. But then again, it couldn't, because we've made changes along the way, which diverted us away from timeline number 2.
Exposure to that black box.
Yeah,
So
it was something that we called the cube, or the yellow disc, or yellow cube, yes.
Okay, but then that was
I
not
have
a
had
looking
experience with
glass. Was that a looking glass?
That is a variant of the technology.
Okay.
However, whilst the looking glass shows probabilities, or has shown probabilities, the cube would react with the people present. So there was an alteration, if you will, over what you were seeing from it. It would actually spin out as a yellow disc out of the top of it, where the word yellow book originally came from. Yeah. And depending upon what predispositions, you could then change the perspective, the tilt, if you will, the orientation or angle of the information being presented back to you. So unless you are well prepared to deal with such a thing, human interaction and human emotions bring instability of the provenance of the information.
Okay, that's what went on with the black box, you're saying?
Yes, and I use that to our advantage at the T9.
At this point, I think it's important to step back and look at this from the outside. The idea of something like looking glass didn't appear out of nowhere. For decades, governments and research institutions have been obsessed with one question. Can complex systems be modeled far enough ahead to understand where they're heading? We already do this in limited ways. Weather models, economic forecasts, military simulations. None of them predict the future with certainty. They map ranges of probability based on inputs and assumptions. What makes this different is the claim that those probabilities could be explored more directly, not just as numbers on a screen, but as something you could interact with, compare, and adjust. That's where things stop sounding theoretical and start sounding uncomfortable, because once you move beyond observation and into interaction, you're no longer just asking what might happen. You're asking whether the act of observing and adjusting could influence which outcome becomes real.
The looking glass has an ability to show one the future. Let's say that one has the looking glass, and you're saying it shows probabilities. And one of the things we were wondering is, how does it do that?
The rings and the amount of information via energy, which is passed into it, and I've got to be very careful with this. The position of the rings, their orientation, the energy running through them, position of the barrel, etc., because you can raise the barrel up on an armature inside the center of it, all come into play as if you have an onion with the various layers of the onion. As you move through the different energy levels, you also move through the different layers, so you get different bits of information. Now imagine an almost infinite number of layers overlain in comparison to the positions of the rings, and an almost infinite amount of energy that you can add or subtract, tuning it up, tuning it down.
Well, it sounds
instead of going up by 1 hertz or by 2 hertz, maybe by 1,000th of a hertz, up and down.
But it sounds like you're working with almost like a kaleidoscope effect. you know, like a kaleidoscope, a real kaleidoscope, the way you would turn and twist and focus, and each time you get a different design, right?
Well, right, except
Time the colors have changed.
yeah, you get a different design and the colors change, but it's like working with multiple kaleidoscopes where when you find two different probabilities that you would run into, you have two kaleidoscopes. And you make a change on one kaleidoscope that may factor or function to a different angular change on another kaleidoscope. So you get two separate pictures that you then have that are flashing back and forth.
Okay.
But yes.
Okay, let me simplify what he's actually describing here. He's saying that what they were seeing wasn't one clear outcome, but multiple possible outcomes appearing at the same time, almost like different versions of the same event overlapping. So instead of guessing which one is real, they tried to separate them visually, frame by frame. They would break the image apart, look at each version individually, and then measure how often each one appeared. The idea was simple. The version that showed up more often was treated as more likely to happen. Then, over time, they would compare what they saw with what actually happened later. And by doing that repeatedly, they believed they could refine the system, not to predict the future perfectly, but to estimate which outcome had a higher chance of becoming real. And this is where another name comes into the conversation. Some of you may have heard it before: Stargate. Over the years, several people have spoken publicly about a project associated with that name, each from their own perspective, each describing different aspects of it.
A Stargate, or equipment that accesses a Stargate or wormhole, is for time travel, right? We're talking about two different things.
Yes.
Are they using the same technology?
Essentially, yes. The original device was the Stargate device. That was then increased in power, if you will, with the use of these field posts. The looking glass device was a back-engineered Stargate.
Okay.
So it was actually back-engineered from the original cylinder seal data, which allowed us to produce the Stargate access devices, if you will, what we call the Stargates.
Before I heard tsunamis are coming, I seen like a spaceship craft or whatever, Nephilim crafts in the sky. He said E.T. Sam, oh yeah, that was me, extraterrestrial, celestial beings from above. Stargate? Okay, he keeps saying Stargate. Wow. He said Stargate will be open. And I'm like, what? And I look it up. And it's a portal. It says the Stargate is actually our Milky Way galaxy, and it is the spin of the Earth that appears to propel you through it. What does that mean, Lord? Magnetic? I feel like he's saying something with a magnetic field. Oh. Same metiae. I don't know if you guys ever saw that Cern thing, that performance they did when they was opening up Cern. You guys know what I'm talking about, where they dressed up and then did a demonic thing? Oh, really?
Yeah, Christine. I do. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I just saw that. I hear portals, and I hear the word demise. I hear access and keys. Portals will be open.
We should have never built. The Stargate, yes, okay, for the purpose of speaking with the visitors from the other timelines, yes, absolutely. The looking glass, no.
When people talk about Stargate as a device, they're usually talking about something very different from what we see in movies. The idea is that some places on Earth are already unusual, places where the environment feels different, where energy, space, or even time doesn't behave the same way it does everywhere else. According to several people who spoke about this over the years, these places already existed in nature. The device wasn't meant to create anything new, but to work with what was already there. Think of it like this. If there's a river underground, the device doesn't create the river, it just helps you access it.
Going throughout the land, and I see the Hadron Collider. And what have I been telling you, my Dorothy? You see, and you see well. I see Cern opening portals, the Hadron Collider. I see spells going out. I see it has something to do with HAARP, opening portals. It was like Cern opened up a portal. Something came from Cern and went to HAARP. Access points. I see tornadoes. Weather events. Oh, Abaddon the Destroyer. And Abaddon the Destroyer is with Shiva and in Cern. So what have I been telling you? They've been brewing tornadoes, magic potions, and spells. And he said the two, and I see Cern, and I see HAARP. He said, what am I telling you? What am I showing you? He's showing me how HAARP sends frequencies to the air. And I think Cern is picking it up somehow. And I seen HAARP send frequencies to the sky, and it created like this electromagnetic field in the sky, if that makes sense. And somehow Cern is picking it up. Okay, and it creates portals to open up weather events. And the weather events have Abaddon the Destroyer behind them. And he said this is how they're doing it. And I heard chemical combustions in the atmospheres and chemtrails. Wow. And Hadron Collider. Okay, now he's showing me how there's more than one Hadron Collider. They're stationed around the world, he said. And in America. Okay, and he's calling them access points. And he wants me to look up all the access points here in America. And then he said Switzerland. I believe that's Geneva, Switzerland. And he said, what is brewing? A mighty storm indeed? And I shall shout it down, my Dorothy. What are they using to come against you? Weather events and climate change. And this will be known of HAARP. And continuous events. Who is seeking my face, daughter? I am sharing the mysteries of I am with my loved ones. Troubled times up ahead. You will know what to do when the world is in decay. And he showed me the people that have been listening to me and hearing the word of God through me. He's saying that they will know what to do, how to prepare, how to shout it down, and how to get ready. And this has been ensuing. And then he said HAARP, numerous weather events, and Abaddon the Destroyer shouted down. Abaddon the Destroyer, but you're reminding me how you said in that word previously that your people are going to go around the world shutting demonic portals. He said right now that are causing chaos, confusion, and numerous weather events. And this is a part of the great wealth transfer. We will need the finances to move on, wow, from location to location. Wow, Lord.
In these accounts, the Stargate device worked like a tool. It helped focus energy or conditions in a specific place so that access became possible. That's why location was so important. The same setup wouldn't work everywhere. It had to be used in the right place. People describe this technology as allowing movement through space and time, but not in a simple or casual way. It wasn't like stepping through a door and going anywhere you want. It was more like following certain paths that already existed. That's why the idea of Stargate is often linked to specific sites, not random locations. The environment itself was part of the system, and this isn't a new idea. Throughout history, different cultures talked about specific places on Earth as being different, locations where something felt off, where navigation, perception, or even time itself didn't behave the same way. For a long time, those stories were dismissed as myths or symbolism. But modern science does acknowledge that certain regions of the planet have unusual electromagnetic properties, areas where signals behave differently, where instruments act strangely. So when I hear claims about devices needing specific locations or being more effective in certain places, I don't immediately think of science fiction. I think about geography, physics, and how little we understand about the environment around us.
There are a number of nodes on the planet, from what I'm understanding, that naturally are sensitive electromagnetically. I don't know. Okay, they're naturally sensitive to the space through which we pass. Okay. These nodes activate spontaneously when we pass through them, or can be struck with electromagnetism and be temporarily opened.
Now, haven't you been investigating a site where there is a natural...
Indeed,
Frenchman Mountain, and your work continues on Frenchman Mountain?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
When you step outside these interviews and look at the broader picture, this idea doesn't exist in isolation. For decades, governments and research institutions have quietly mapped unusual locations on the planet, places where signals weaken, where navigation behaves oddly, where instruments don't always respond as expected. Not because of portals or theories like these, but because those areas matter strategically. Pilots have reported regions where compasses drift. Military engineers have documented zones where communication systems lose accuracy. Geophysicists study areas where the Earth's magnetic field behaves differently than the surrounding regions. Most of the time, these places are explained in practical terms: geology, minerals, underground structures, electromagnetic interference. But what's interesting is that these locations tend to appear in clusters, not randomly scattered. That's where the scale starts to change the conversation. Because once you move from the idea of a single site to patterns across different regions, the question stops being, does this place exist, and becomes something else entirely. How many places like this are there? How many have been identified, mapped, or quietly monitored over time? At that point, the topic stops being about one mountain or one location. It becomes about a broader network, spread across different countries, different environments, different conditions, and that's where this discussion leads next.
Are we able to know how many man-made stargates there were on the planet?
No. I'm not going to comment as to the total. I will say that there was over 50.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. In different countries of the world?
Yes.
Okay, and these are man-made?
Yes.
Okay, so, and natural stargates?
Well, see, it's not a Stargate. It's a device which accesses.
Okay,
which accesses a portal, a wormhole,
does it
or
access a natural, in other words, the man-made device accesses a natural Stargate?
It draws off from a natural ERB, an Einstein-Rosen bridge.
Okay.
It accesses it and somehow works, from what I understand, not in parallel, but almost like piggybacks on the energy of the natural Stargate.
You're saying you don't want to use the looking glass for advantage over country to country, but what about country to off-world?
No. It shouldn't be used at all.
I understand, but
all right.
But is there something there? I mean, in other words, is this technology something that they are using now to look at our relationships with, because they've been
the technology is not being used at all right now.
Okay, but the reason it's not used now is because of where we're going into the galactic, the plane of the...
Yeah. As of about 2017, I would expect probably that all of these little pieces of equipment will probably all get reassembled, yeah.
Turned back on.
Oh, sure.
2017? That's quite a while.
2016, 2017.
Oh, not until then?
Probably not.
Meaning...
I'm figuring that they're probably going to act conservatively on this. That's what all of the people of wisdom have suggested to them.
Oh, wow.
Is to act conservatively.
He says that what they were looking at wasn't a single event, but part of a much larger cycle. The idea is that history doesn't move in a straight line. It moves in long cycles that repeat over very long periods of time. Not years or decades, but tens of thousands of years. Inside those long cycles, there are shorter phases, when major changes tend to happen. The time window he mentions, roughly from the 1990s to around 2012, and possibly extending to 2016, wasn't described as a fixed deadline. It was more like a rough zone inside that larger cycle where things begin to shift. He also makes an important point about scale. When you're dealing with timelines that stretch 45,000 or even 50,000 years, being off by a few years doesn't really matter. From that distance, time looks blurred. A decade can disappear inside the margin of error. That's why he compares it to our own history. We still argue about what really happened just 2,000 years ago, even with written records. So trying to interpret information that comes from tens of thousands of years away becomes extremely difficult.
It's very wise for them to wait.
Okay, and you mean the looking glasses are now decommissioned, but also the Stargate technology?
Yeah, they're decommissioned, and the Stargates and the looking glasses, I'm sure they're all in their little mothballed containers and all of that, and they have been separated. The three components of each have been separated and moved to different power structures, diplomatic and military authorities in the world. And we're talking about the EU specifically, the UN and NATO. Those are in specific control of one of the three components each. and I cannot comment as to which component is contained by whom.
After hearing all of this, I think the most important thing isn't deciding what's true or what isn't, it's noticing the pattern. Different people, different times, different angles, all circulating around the same ideas, probabilities, cycles, locations, access, not as answers, but as questions that keep coming back.
Hey guys, this video is brought to you by Glory Changers. Go and check out the Glory Changer store where you can get these bracelets that say Jesus, Yeshua, Adonai. There's many different bracelets for men and women. I do pray, decree, and declare and release the anointing over each bracelet that I make. Each bracelet is made with love, and whatever the Lord has me decree and declare onto it for the person who will receive it, because he knows all things. Glory Changers, from glory to glory. Come and check out the Glory Changer store.